So after speaking with numerous landlords and investors, there's almost this required distinction between flex and co-working now. Because over the last 3 to 5 years, those two terms have been blurred. And rightfully so, because the market was trying to figure out how to provide flexibility to tenants asking for it in the building when they were signing their long-term leases. But I think it needs to be separated because there's a lot of confusion when it comes from an operator side versus a landlord side on what's what. So here's how I see it, sitting on both sides of the table. Co-working in itself, right, is a very desk-dense operation. And even when you think of that business model, the majority of the commerce comes from re-renting desks and private offices. Obviously, there's a big experience piece to it, but when you think about it, even from the operator side, if you want to look at the money, always follow where the money goes. The main way that they, I guess, generate margin is by selling desks. So co-working, even from a product mix perspective, if you want to think about it, is think of lots of private offices and desks, which underpins the ability to provide certain amenities like meeting spaces, event spaces, concierge services, all of that. But without the desks and the offices, the other stuff can't live in isolation because there's not enough revenue coming in to cover the costs and support a co-working business model. Okay. Now, Flex is different because Flex is a tool that a lot of investors and landlords need to lean on and figure out, especially this year moving forward, on how to retain anchor tenants or tenants that are trying to figure out their office strategy. Okay, and a lot of these owners can't afford to just chuck in a co-working operator the moment a tenant asks for flexibility or the moment they're trying to figure out what flex looks like for their building. Okay, and that may not be a preference. It might just be because their building's not big enough to handle a 2,000 to 3,000 square meter co-working operation. And frankly, in this market, almost every deal put on their table is a management agreement, which obviously impacts that asset's valuation integrity because it's variable income if it's not under a lease. So there needs to be this distinction. And I feel like the blurriness has come because many co-working operators, frankly, have become very comfortable being the sole solution to flexibility and rebranded co-working to Flex because there was a shift in targeting, startups, small businesses to enterprise style clients. So obviously Flex sounds way sexier than co-working. So I think moving forward, when you think about Flex and co-working, and I know it's going to take some time because even I use both terms sometimes, there needs to be that distinction because you're going to have a lot of owners who need Flex and they're not asking for co-working. And you're going to have a lot of tenants who ask for flexibility, but they're only asking for a 16-person boardroom and a few larger meeting rooms and event space and maybe a commercial kitchen because they don't want to put it in their tenancy. They're not asking necessarily for the 200 to 300 desks that come with it, which is what will happen if a co-working operator comes in, right? And there's definitely examples where a co-working partner is the right move for your building, but again, not every scenario. And it's an interesting space, and you probably don't hear a lot about the term flex because you don't have many operators pushing flex, right? Because that business model does not work for a traditional co-working operator because there's no real income coming from these amenity-driven or bookable spaces beyond the private offices and the desk, where the majority of that money comes from for a co-working business model. So you're going to see players and operators more within the property management space, within the real estate services space, such as my team, we're the JLL Flex team, where we can kind of adapt and mold into providing these very flex light operations. So think anywhere between 400 to 1,000 square meters, even on the lower end of that, because an owner might need flex, but they only need a small quantum of that space. And then it also doesn't impact their asset valuation integrity too much, right? Because they're almost seeing it as a bit of an amenity, even though it's designed to wash its face and maybe make some rent. So that's some flex for thought. And this isn't me just having a flex and co-working needs to split rant. This is what the market is asking for, right? So if you're a co-working operator, I think play a part and start calling yourself co-working again. I mean, if you are providing elements within the ground floor activation, concierge, and a business lounge, sure, that's flex, but an extension of the co-working that you have upstairs, right? Because just think about it this way. If an owner asks for a flex RFP or a brief within their building, but they only want you to take 400 to 500 square meters of flex or third space, are you going to bid on it? No, because you want co-working space. You want 2,000, 3,000 square meters of NLA, so you get the economies of scale, so you can make your margin and pay that rent equivalent, whether it's under a management agreement or hybrid lease. So hopefully that helps, and I'll speak to you again soon.